I get a lot of my inspiration from nature. It's where I feel like I'm my best self when I'm outside moving. And so it felt really important to me to pull in that piece and to work with people who are in the outdoor community who are trying to figure out how to move their bodies in ways that are sustainable and healthy for them.
Hello, and welcome to the Connect podcast. This show is all about helping you connect to your soul's calling so you can take action on it. Because the sweetest success is a blend of discovering your purpose with the inner drive to bring it to life. I'm Sheila Botello, health coach, lifestyle entrepreneur, and mom of two, best known for my online wellness programs, mentoring, and self-love passion. Listen in for inspiring interviews, solo chats, and Q&A sessions that will move you past overwhelm towards what lights you up. Stop accepting good enough and go for your version of great in your health, business, and relationships. Let's get started. Hey there, welcome back to the Connect podcast. My guest today is a mental health-informed adventure fitness trainer from Alaska. Sarah Miller Histand is a mental health counselor, personal trainer, and lover of long adventures in the mountains. She helps outdoorsy women build strong minds and bodies without shame, needing to prove themselves, or overriding their body's signals. Sarah teaches how to avoid the traps of no pain, no gain adventure fitness bro culture, and instead build strength in efficient, fun, and mentally healthy ways. And that is also the goal of the active, passionate women she works with. Sarah's vision is a world full of women with strong bodies and minds, resilient when life is hard, and having as much fun as possible the rest of the time. I can't wait for you to hear her story and get a dose of inspiration from her vibrant spirit. Enjoy the interview. Sarah, thank you so much for joining me today. I understand that you're about to leave on a backpacking trip tomorrow. So we're able to get this interview in prior to your trip. Where are you headed? How long are you going? Who are you going with?
That's right. I know there's so many things I wanted to squeeze in before this trip. So I'm heading out into the eastern Alaska range. In Alaska, it's kind of the northeast corner of the state. And I'm going out with my husband, and this is a route through, it's like an 80-mile route through some mountains that we've been eyeing for a while. We're going to do mostly hiking, and then we'll finish with like a 25-mile section of floating and pack rafts. And hopefully it'll all work out.
That sounds amazing. I have a feeling it will, because I've been looking at some of the adventures you've taken, and you will be sharing about some of them, and you've made it back. So I think you're going to do great. That sounds really beautiful. And it sounds really peaceful as well. When I think about Alaska, when I think about our north, because of course you're in Alaska and I'm in Toronto area, but the furthest north I've been is like Cottage Country, Ontario, and then part of BC area. But I have friends right now who are in none of it. Our countries are so vast. So talk to me about how long, like, have you lived your whole life in Alaska?
I was born up here, and I was up in Alaska through high school, and then I left. I felt like I needed to get out and see the world. And I went to college out of state and spent some time in South America, experimenting with different areas and different ways of living. And then eventually felt that gravitational pull back to Alaska, because it's just a really unique way of life up here that I haven't been able to recreate anywhere else.
Who were your role models for being as active and as passionate about life as you are?
Well, my parents actually are from the Midwest US. So farm country, they're Mennonites. They both kind of grew up in traditional conservative families, farming families, and they got married and bought a VW bus and started traveling around the country for their honeymoon, and then decided to keep going up to Alaska and kind of ran out of money and decided to get some summer jobs, and then they've been here ever since. So I actually think there's part of that that's in my blood from them, even though they're kind of living a really traditional life now that they're settled here too.
Wow, that's amazing. There's something about that sense of exploration that we can have. Here, you've been able to turn it into a very adventurous career that is quite closely connected to nature. you've told me that you created your business with your passions and values at the center, and you found a beautiful way of continuing to combine your work with movement, mental health, and the outdoors to help others heal and connect to their potential. So please tell us what led you to do this kind of work.
Yeah. Okay. So this is you're exactly right it's been a real kind of windy creative process to figure out how to make it all fit together. But um, there was this point in my life where I was running a gym in a little town in Alaska called Valdez, a little town of like 4,000 people on the ocean. So I was running the one gym in town there, and I was also working on my mental health master's degree in social work. And so I had to do an internship for that job. And so I would be at my day job working with people on their fitness. And the second you dug like just a little bit under the surface into what people were struggling with fitness, there'd be all these feelings and all this shame and all this like I'm emotionally eating and like I'm in these patterns and I don't know how to get out. And it was like these people could use some mental health support. And then I'd go over to my internship over in the counseling world and sit with people in those sessions. And a lot of people were like kind of overwhelmed by their feelings and stuck in these ruts. And I'd have this urge to be like, let's get moving. Like if you move your body a little bit, this would really help. And so it was such an interesting juxtaposition to be in these two places at once and really clearly see the need to bridge this gap. So that was one of the places that felt really synergistic. And then for me, being outdoors is another piece to this value-centered, holistic, and inspired life. I get a lot of my inspiration from nature. It's where I feel like I'm my best self when I'm outside moving. So it felt really important to me to pull in that piece and to work with people who are in the outdoor community who are trying to figure out how to move their bodies in ways that are sustainable and healthy for them. I think there's a lot of, I call it like adventure bro culture, where it's more is better and crush it. A lot of people looking for a more like embodied and holistic way to be outdoors. I was kind of seeing this and experiencing it in my own life and started to think about how to bring those three components together. I took some of the classes that I was teaching in that gym in Valdez and added the mental health element to it and then tweaked them so that they really were supportive of outdoor endeavors. And that's what I'm working with now. And it's been really fun to take out into the world and put online, because online is such a nice way to reach a wider community of like-minded people. And I'm able to reach people in rural Alaska where there's no gyms at all. So we're getting out to a very wide variety of folks and people who live in different parts of the world too. So it's been really a creative and exciting process.
Oh, it sounds like it. And I can see how people from all over the place would be tuning in to some of your live videos and your courses and letting the imagery have them see what possibilities they could implement in their own life, and even inspiring them to get out into the nature that surrounds them, get out of the office, get out of the home, and start exploring in their own local environment. And when I look at a lot of your stuff, I feel like, ooh, I got to go to Alaska. I love to travel. I think a lot of us do. And right now we maybe feel that urge more than ever because we're not able to. And often we just want what we can't have at the moment. I do love that integrative approach that you take. I am an integrative nutrition health coach, and I believe health is so much more than what we put in our bodies, how we move our bodies. It's the combination of those things and what's going on in our spiritual life, what's going on in our soul and our relationships and our work. Everything combined impacts every single part of our life. So I love that you've been able to integrate both. And it's true that that movement piece about moving your body to move through your feelings is amazing. I know through many times of straight up grief in my life, in losing people that I love, my daily walk became my spiritual practice because I was able to walk through the emotions. And if I had just stayed stagnant, probably those emotions would have taken longer to come through also. And of course, I'm a verbal processor, an outward processor. So like I talked about it too, so that helped. But that whole moving, talking, sharing, it does. It's an amazing thing. You also talk about how your life is all about the cultivation of strength, balance, and self awareness. And I love that you even have a mantra that can help people through challenging times. And I really want to use this one for myself. It's, we've been training for this. It just feels so reassuring. What are some of the ways you help people cultivate this inner strength in your work?
Well, I love that mantra too. I use quite a few different mantras for different occasions, and really, that is one of the ways that has been really helpful in my own life. And I see it with a lot of the people I work with. When we can use a mantra to get our brains back to remembering what is also true, when we're in a hard time, we can get overwhelmed by that experience, and actually logistically, physically, your brain shuts down so that it doesn't have full access to your prefrontal cortex and all of your abilities to think and plan and recognize capacity. So when we are really overwhelmed by stuff, having a super simple mantra we've already been utilizing in other times of maybe a bit of stress can help us plug back into getting more use of our whole brain and being able to remember that we have capacity to handle whatever is going on. So we use things like mantras during a workout so that we're experiencing some stress that we're putting on ourselves. We're stressing our system out when we're challenging it with a workout, but when we can start drilling in some of those neural pathways in those situations. And then we do a lot of self-compassion and being comfortable with imperfection in the process. That's another piece to untangling some of the conditioning that we have, especially as women, that we need to be perfect, or that we're not doing enough, and the things that derail us mentally when we run into the inevitable hardships that are out there. I feel like people who don't have that kind of conditioning, like people, white males maybe, are the only ones in this situation are able to be like, oh, it's just a situation. My husband or the other guys that I sometimes recreate are so good at blaming their gear when something goes wrong outside. For instance, they're like, it's my bike, I need some new tires. It's really easy for them to separate their self and their abilities from the difficulty that they're going through. And what I personally tend to do, and a lot of the other women I work with, is we put it on ourselves. We feel like we're doing something wrong and we're not good at this, and all these patterns. And I mean, the outdoor rec is such like a concrete way that I see this play out, but I think it happens in all different, in our businesses and in our families and all over the place. So any time we can recognize that we are blaming ourselves and measuring ourselves down from a perfect standard rather than up from zero, we're doing a lot more than nothing right now. We practice all that kind of stuff in workouts, and then we practice noticing how those can translate into outdoor time and daily life.
That self-awareness is so powerful. And I know once I've started to listen to the way I've spoken to myself over the years and then begun to switch some of that language, it's amazing what will happen and what you can do. And something as simple as a workout, where maybe at one point I may have said, I can't do this, I can't finish, I can't lift that, it's too much, switching to, you've got this, just one more, let's do this. It's amazing how just that shift in language gives you that energy that you need. And wouldn't it be great if we had that language for other areas of our life so that we can feel elevated, and not relying on other people to elevate us, but elevating ourselves to accomplish the things we were trying to do. But also, as you said, having that graciousness to ourselves, that love, that there is no perfection. Perfection is an illusion. And even you're so much in nature, you see, nature is not perfectly symmetrical. It's every organism, every human, everybody is different. And that's where the beauty lies. So thank you for reminding us of that. Now you have some really fun, challenging programs as well. And I love the names that you've chosen for. You've got one called Summer Strong. One is called Balance Training. And then my favorite, which I believe is coming up, is Ski Babes. So what are some highlights of each of these programs?
Yeah, well, thanks. I'm glad you like the names. They've been fun to create. And yeah, Ski Babes is the one we're recording this in September. And so that's going to start up in October. And around that time every year in the fall is the plan, at least. So they all are fairly similar in their setup. They are online workouts that are short, and they're set up to like fit into busy people's lives that have lots they want to do. And even for like a lot of the outdoorsy folks that I work with are like, I want to spend my time outside. I don't want to be doing a workout inside. But sometimes we only have that like 30-40 minute block of time to move. And there's a lot you can do with that time if you've got a structure for it. So streamlined workouts that we do 3 workouts a week, and then a lot of support for outdoor adventures on the rest of the time. And for ski babes specifically, we focus on the stability that we want to have in our bodies for winter, actually like physical stability to deal with slippery surfaces and the imbalances that happen in winter sports and just in winter life. If you're going to be outside and you live somewhere where it snows or ices or does all other like random stuff for the winter.
In there every year.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about skiing. I mean, it's called Ski Babes, and a lot of the people that are in the program do like to ski. But honestly, we're doing a lot of training that's handy for like carrying your groceries to the car when it's icy out. That's when most of the injuries tend to happen. So
it is a skill. It truly, truly is. I'm so grateful that my boys are old enough to carry a lot of the bags for me now. I mean, I can do it, but I'm like, hey, help out mom. It's a beautiful thing.
And then in winter, we have to deal with so much mood management too. I find a lot of people are affected by darkness. And, we don't have quite as many opportunities for being outside. And sunlight is really something that I'm very affected by. So I noticed that in the winter. So a lot of talk about how we can use the winter for the benefits of that phase of things, and also work to keep our mental health stable during that phase of the year.
That's great. It's great that you're combining both of those things again through your programs, the physical and the mental. I think it's just really important. And yes, especially with winter coming, I'm sure also you experienced more of a greater need through earlier this year. Also, people requiring that a little extra dose of loving support. Now, I saw that last year you did a 3-week traverse across the western third of Alaska's Brooks Range. Now, you got to tell us a bit about this adventure. What were a couple of highlights that you have from this trek?
So I've been doing these long traverses with my husband and sometimes with a couple other friends. Last year, we did a trip in the western section of the Brooks Range. And then this summer, I haven't posted about it yet, but we did in June and July do another 3-week trip in the kind of central section of the Brooks Range. And it's hard to just pick a couple highlights because really the experience of being out in the mountains, self-supported, without internet or cell phone or really any other extra support, just what we were carrying on our backs, is really incredible. And I'm so grateful to be able to pull those things off. It's a huge privilege to be able to take that amount of time away from work and daily life, and I'm trying to take advantage of that as long as we can. My husband and I are trying to have kids right now, so we're not sure how many more years we'll be in that variation on the long backcountry trip, but we're enjoying it while we can. I had a couple really magical places stick in my mind. We, on one day, found this incredibly clear pool to swim in, and we're like 2 weeks in after of hiking, so it feels really amazing to be able to jump in and clean off. And then after we got in the water, we realized that there were fossils in the rocks alongside this pool. It just felt like this incredibly magical little place that we stumbled upon. And then we also had a couple really neat wildlife encounters on this last trip. One with a super cute big bear that was laying belly up on the mountainside and looked like it was so human. It looked at us when we made some noise and it fell back asleep like it tried to push snooze. So yeah, really, really special experience.
That is magical. You are living quite an adventurous life. And I'd love to hear you expand on how people can gain the courage to take a step into something new in their life. It seems like this has been something, as you mentioned earlier, that you've had that adventurous spirit for a while. But what could you tell someone who is wanting to shake things up a bit, but their fear might be holding them back?
Yeah, well, when you asked me earlier about my influences and I talked about my parents, I was also thinking about how in the like outdoor rec world, when I was young, I was watching some people who are kind of Alaska famous here doing some really big, impressive outdoor adventures. And I always felt like, wow, those people are amazing. And then I got out of college and came back here and started to think about wanting to do things that looked like they were sort of similar, but I was super intimidated by that and felt like I wasn't in that realm of people. And then I remember I saw this quote that came through. It must have been like, I don't even think Instagram was a thing then. I must have been on Facebook. And it said, if you knew you couldn't fail, what would you do? And that just like hit me at the right time, right before I was taking on this ski race that I wasn't sure I was up for. And it really did help me recognize that if I knew I couldn't fail at it, I would for sure try. And for that trip, especially, we had a ton of backup plans, So I think I like playing with the imagination a little bit to see if you take failure out of the whole equation, what would you do? And then if you like think about what that leads you to, and then you put fear and failure and all the things that are really there back in, can we mitigate those with some backup plans and with some support and with some like baby steps toward that thing? We don't have to do it all. We don't have to go there right away. We can build toward it. All of those. I mean, I think about the ways that I'm training my body and my mind just through these workouts that I'm doing on a semi-regular basis, a few times a week. Those feel to me like baby steps toward being resilient enough to handle hard times. So I think there are lots of super small daily life ways we can start building the mental and physical strength that we need to take on challenge.
That's a really great way of describing it. When you take fear out of the equation, what could happen? And I don't know if we allow ourselves the space to imagine that. We just really fixate on the fear. That's a learned response, I think. And like you mentioned earlier, retraining our neural pathways. So even if we just thought of some really wild, outlandish ideas and we just imagined ourselves doing them without fear, what would that feel like? Not that we actually have to do them or have to commit to doing them, but even if we made space to imagine that, could that potentially help rewire our brains a little bit? I don't know. I might do that this weekend. I might put that on the calendar. Sounds like fun.
I think that just like opens up the possibility in your mind, and then that might plant a seed. And I mean, all of this works with our nervous system and our capacity. So we might not have the capacity to go there right away, but the seed might be planted. And then over time, as you work with that fear and start increasing your comfort for some of what would that next thing would require, it's gotten easier for me. I mean, that's been part of the business growth arc too, is like taking baby steps of being out there and being seen and using my voice. And over time, it's gotten easier. So I think that applies in a lot of different ways.
For sure. And I've encountered more people in recent years who struggle with anxiety. And this year, it's definitely been on the rise. There's no surprise about that. And you recently, kind of in keeping with what you were saying, you recently posted a video called Nervous System 101 and how nervous system health impacts our workouts, adventures, relationships, and our daily lives. Talk to me about how we can train our nervous system to work for us.
Gosh, I love this topic. And the more I dive into nervous system work, I feel like we can't not be affected by it. It's happening under the surface, whether that we're paying attention to it or not. But in general, our nervous system has like this sort of middle zone, a window of tolerance where when you're inside that zone, we're able to recover and rest and heal and digest our food. And like, we're able to pretty much handle our body's functioning at its optimal place inside that window. And then anytime we're under a stressful situation, we either jump up to like fight or flight, we go into adrenaline, get a bunch of activation chemicals flowing through our body, or we go into a collapse, overwhelm, like depression, like I can't do this place at the bottom of the nervous system continuum. And first off, the self-awareness piece is so critical with that, because we can start to recognize we get these patterns built into our system, and we can tend to either jump up or to collapse down. And knowing that that's where you go when you get stressed is a really helpful thing, because then we can work with that, instead of it just happening and then you're stuck in that reaction. So I really feel like self-awareness is the first piece of all that. That's maybe, and then working with some level of manageable stress. So the more we can start to recognize our low level stress signals, because it's so easy to recognize, like, I'm freaking out right now, like when it's gotten to like a 9 or a 10 on your stress scale. But if we can learn to notice what's happening in our system when we're just getting to like a 6, 7, something like that, then we can start to work with it without jumping out of the zone of tolerance and going into our survival responses full on. So we do all of that through movement, like through being really attentive to your body and to your mind when we're doing semi-stressful stuff, and then noticing what helps us recover. And that skill of being able to recognize what's happening and then to have a slew of tools to try to help return to that zone of tolerance it's a super fun toolbox to try to put together, because some tools work some days really well, and then next time you try them, maybe they won't. So you kind of need a whole different range of things to experiment with.
Exactly. We're different from each other, but we're also, today's version of me is different from tomorrow's version of me, which is different from next week's version of me. And it's understanding that we're all sharing different parts of ourselves at different times, depending on the circumstance. And I'm sure in response to that, you've come across all sorts of different personalities from all walks of life coming into your programs. And I would imagine a lot of soul searching goes on during this process. So what questions do you believe people should be asking themselves to cultivate their inner strength and healing?
Ooh, what a good question. Let me take a breath before I answer that one. That feels really important. The questions to ask yourself to develop that inner strength. I think at the center of this feels like attentiveness to your own experience. So I really love the question of what are you noticing? What are you noticing with your own body and mind? And where is your attention right now? Like let's see. So I'm a real strong believer that capacity and inner strength is there inside of us. It's just been like conditioned away or like hidden or buried under a bunch of other stuff. And we're so good at like looking out for the answers and looking to other people to help us. So doing a lot of work at redirecting attention inward, noticing what's physically going on in your body somatically, where your tension is, what are you gripping, what are your feelings, all that stuff. And then, so after self-awareness and that inner gaze, I would start asking where your strength is. What helps you be stable right now? Like, can you feel your feet on the ground? And can you feel, are your legs strong right now holding you up? And maybe you have to look back at other areas of your life where you've risen to the challenge. I actually collect and encourage people to collect physical items that remind them of their successes or things that have gone well over the like that they've been through before. Call it an evidence locker. And sometimes we need that like physical example. I can like flip through testimonials of people that told me my work was helpful, like when I'm in self-doubt, some evidence of the strength that you have there. That's where I'd start.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. Isn't it interesting? So often we don't think about what am I doing great? What am I strong with? So actually spending that time focusing in on that is so helpful. And asking if people don't feel like they have that evidence locker, to be able to connect with the people around them who are closest to them and maybe some acquaintances, business partners, whatever the case, to find out, what is it about me that you value and what strengths do you see in me? And I think probably asking that question can feel very vulnerable and almost too self-centered in a way. But I think when we ask those questions and we're also prepared to give our answer for other people as well, to mirror that back to them, there's a beauty in actually celebrating the successes that we have and also celebrating the successes of others. Because I think too often the cultural norm is to look at what did you do wrong? Where did you fail? And how did I not measure up to this other person? Or someone is doing great and then you've been behind them, encouraging them, or excited about like somebody that you're seeing on social media or in the greater media. And then they hit a certain pinnacle and people just want to tear them down. Instead of, well, let's just keep celebrating each other and realizing that we're human and we're going to have things about us. We're going to have our flaws, things that just don't really work out sometimes. But focusing on our strengths and our success can really be a source of energy to move forward too. I love that you do that.
We think of successes that needing to be really big and impressive and visible, but the smallest thing is a success. I think that's some of that conditioning we have too about like it
Yes.
needs to be extreme to be cool enough, but getting out of bed is amazing. Putting pants on is great. Like the smallest thing, just out in nature, a leaf can be incredibly meaningful and beautiful. I just want to add that in there, and not as a way to bypass pain or pretend like it's not there or be toxic with our positivity, but to be able to hold the hard parts of life. We need to be able to also recognize that we're strong enough to hold them. So it's like we have to be strong in order to be fully human. So I think it's like a both and thing instead of gratitude our way away from the human experience.
Oh, yes, absolutely. A thought came up as you were talking earlier about your parents' experience. They came from, you said, a Mennonite background. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And so is that part of your faith practice now? How has your faith practice changed, or has it remained the same as you've come along this journey of life?
Yeah, I am not a practicing Mennonite at this point. I did pull way away from spirituality as I moved out of my parents' house and felt like I need to like shake off some of the like strictness and the rules that I was experiencing with some of that religious straight-laced stuff.
Mhm.
So I pulled way away. And then as I came back to Alaska, came back to nature, and then started to do a bunch of my own healing work with my body and my own developmental trauma stuff, have spirituality has been a really important part of all of that. And I felt like I had to kind of heal my relationship with spirituality, honestly, from some of my childhood experience with it. But now there's some really incredible things that I appreciate from the Mennonite culture and the lineage there. For me personally, these days, I get a lot of my connection from nature and feeling connected to Mother Nature and the earth. And I'm honestly still kind of creating and working with all of that, since I'm kind of in the process of doing all that spirituality healing.
It truly is a journey. And actually, just Monday of when the week we're recording this, I had just put out an episode and it's entitled Love is My Religion. And it shares a little bit about my spiritual journey. And it is a journey I'm still on also. The current church that I follow teaching at, their background is rooted in Brethren in Christ, which is an offshoot of the Mennonite. So it's a more modern faith system. And yeah, it's just really interesting because you're going to find from wherever you end up, there's people coming from all different experiences. But the thing that I see about you is I notice there's definitely love within you that fuels what you're doing, and a love for people. And to do the work that you're doing, you have to have that empathy and that desire to connect with people. It's beautiful to witness. And I do credit that partially to nature as well, because when you stand in the majesty of creation, it's hard to not believe that there's something making everything work. The majesty of what our life experience is. I really love to hear where people have been and where they're headed on their spiritual journey, because I really believe we are spiritual beings on our human journey. And I'm just glad we get to do it together.
Seriously,
Oh,
community is so helpful with all of this. I'll
absolutely.
definitely listen to that. I'm excited to hear. It's really neat to see those overlaps. I like
Yeah,
that.
it is. It is so cool. Yeah. So, Sarah, it has been so much fun connecting with you. And I would love for you to share where we can find and follow you online. And of course, we'll put information in the show notes about Ski Babes coming up. That way people can be aware of how they can connect with you.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. So on social media, Instagram is my favorite platform. So my profile there is Sarah M. Histand, and that's where I'll put up pictures of my next trip. So I think it's going to be really gorgeous. It's like fall colors up here right now, and so it's cool. I love to share trip pictures and then all the things that I'm stewing on in my mind on there as well. And then my website is also my name. So that's sarahamhistand.com. And that's where the programs like Ski Babes are found.
That's great. Well, I'm going to be following and looking for those photos because that's going to inspire me even more to put Alaska on the travel list.
Yes, and I
Awesome.
was gonna say everybody, I really do feel like everybody should come up to Alaska if you have that like glimmer in your curiosity about it. I know we're not doing much traveling these days, but when it's an option, again, I highly, highly recommend it. And I do also believe that the nature that is like just stepping outside, whatever building you're in, is also nature. And there are little moments of magic available through whatever nature is accessible to you in your daily life too. So it doesn't have to be 3 weeks in the backcountry to get some of that nature connection.
Wonderful. Well, I'm so glad you could be here with me today and share all these things that you're doing. I hope you have an amazing trip, and I look forward to meeting up with you again.
Sounds good. Thanks so much for having me. It was really fun talking with you.
Thank you so much for being here with me on the Connect podcast. If you like this episode, please share it with someone you think would enjoy it. Also, if you head over to iTunes to leave a review, I'd be so grateful. Let us know what your favorite parts were and what you'd like to hear more of. It will help us have a greater impact, elevating many more people to grow and succeed together. See you next time.